Nation, what's up? How are you doing? Did you get fired up by Shawn Fain? Shawn Fain is a labor leader who is showing us what it means to be principled, to stand up and fight for working people. And I'll tell you, the energy around the labor movement and organizing in the labor movement is the thing that gives me so much hope across the country. When you think about it, and I live in Seattle, which is the headquarters of Starbucks, and the Starbucks Workers United is organizing a national contract for all of those stores and showing us a new way to do sectoral bargaining, really pushing us to think. But you think about the UAW, you think about Starbucks, you think about all the places across the country where workers are realizing their power, and they're standing up and they're fighting for what they deserve. And that, to me, is showing what it looks like when we use our collective power to win. And that is why I'm so proud to be in this room with fierce progressive leaders from across the country who have been pushing to make democracy work, pushing back against the power of big money in politics, pushing to remind everybody that our country has never suffered from scarcity. We have always suffered from greed. And we can change that. Now, I know things are tough right now. We're all feeling it, and we can't ignore it because we see it every day in our countless, in our communities and all the countless ways. I certainly see it on the House floor where MAGA Republicans are trying to arrest Merrick Garland or bring freedom to our appliances, even as they take away freedom from our people across the country. And they are wasting our time. They're wasting our time because what they're focusing on is taking away every freedom for LGBTQIA people, for voting rights, for abortion rights, for the right to have one job that pays you well, for the right to take care of your family, for the right to retire with dignity, for the right to have universal health care with Medicare for all. Donald Trump wants to take away our freedoms, and oh yeah, he wants to be dictator on day one. But this movement, sister, we are not going to let that happen. Is that right? And we know how to fight back because we have done it before. We have taken on some of the biggest, most powerful special interests, and we've defeated them time and time again. And so today, I just want to spend my few minutes talking to you, reminding you about how our progressive movement has been able to do so much to take us forward and to progress, and what our victories have meant for millions of people. But then I also want to be real, because I'm always real and honest, about what we're still facing, because the stakes are really high and the cost of failure is overwhelming. And then finally, I want to talk about how we're going to win, and what we're going to need to do, and why you and your work is so important. Now, some of you know this. I'm an organizer. That's what I did. That's what I did for 20 years before coming to Congress, organized the largest immigrant rights organization in Washington State, and have been organizing for economic justice, the highest minimum wage in Seattle, the first major city to pass $15 minimum wage. I was on that committee to help make that happen. And I never wanted to be in elected office. I really didn't. I never wanted to be in elected office because I thought that the place where change happened the best was on the outside. But then I realized something. I realized that we needed to start organizing inside Congress, inside elected office as well. And we needed to use elected office as a platform for our organizing, and we needed more organizers on the inside and the outside. And that's exactly what I've been doing for 8 years. The Congressional Progressive Caucus, which I'm proud to chair now, is the largest it has ever been in history. But most importantly, we have exercised our courage muscle. That's what I call it. It needs exercise. We have exercised our courage muscle over and over again with some of the most historic wins in the country's history, and with a PAC that has now grown to pour millions of dollars into supporting new, elected, diverse members of Congress who are also organizers. You heard from many of them yesterday. You heard from Greg Kassar. You heard from Rashida Tlaib. You heard from Delia Ramirez, you heard from Cori Bush. These are people who are bringing energy into our caucus and showing us what it means to organize on the inside and outside. I don't want you to forget that it was our movement that pushed Democrats from Joe Biden and the White House, the Senate, to embrace our agenda. Our progressive agenda that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren championed during the 2020 presidential campaign, an agenda that was about working and poor people across this country, an agenda that reminded us that we all deserve, it's not just a right, we deserve universal health care, college for all, expanded Social Security, union power, a fair tax system, clean air, clean water, a planet that survives our kids. We deserve all of that. We deserve it. This is not some crazy left-wing radical agenda. This is what humanity demands of us. And I don't want you to forget that when the negotiations happened, it was the Progressive Caucus, along with the progressive movement of organizations outside, that held the line and insisted on passing through the House over and over again against the wishes of our leadership even, the infrastructure bill and Build Back Better through the House. And you're right, we didn't get Build Back Better passed through the Senate. We were just 2 votes away. But what is important is that we were only 2 votes away. We teed it up, and had we not passed that, we never would have passed the Inflation Reduction Act, with the highest investment ever in taking on climate change, with the first ever American Climate Corps creating 20,000 jobs for young people to preserve our planet, with Justice 40 for the first time, 40% of all our federal investments going into the communities that are most disproportionately burdened. And how about in those negotiations with the CHIPS and Science Act, that I sat down and negotiated with Commerce Secretary Raimondo on behalf of the Progressive Caucus, that corporations who do stock buybacks don't get federal money. Now, Elizabeth Warren and I are having to do some accountability, let's say, and actually make sure that that doesn't happen. But this is the first time we even had it in writing to be able to do the accountability that we are doing right now. And by pushing hard and holding the line, we took on age-old battles and won, like forcing Big Pharma to negotiate drug prices with Medicare, capping the cost of insulin at $35 for seniors, making the wealthiest corporations and individuals begin to pay more of their fair share, and yes, by getting the administration to use its executive power to finally cancel billions of dollars in student debt, to pardon thousands of people who are charged with possessing marijuana, and finally get medical debt off your credit records. We finally increased funding for NLRB so they could crack down on union-busting companies. And we increased funding for the IRS to crack down on tax cheats. In fact, the IRS just put something out that said that with our investment, they have collected now over $1 billion from those wealthy tax cheats who are trying to evade their taxes. All those Republicans and even conservative Democrats kept yelling that these investments in working and poor people would destroy our economy, that we would have huge unemployment. But that is not what happened. What actually happened is we're down to the lowest level of unemployment that we've seen in over 50 years. We've seen that when the tax code is fairer, it gives us money to invest in things like education. And when you stand up and take on Big Pharma, you do lower the price of drugs for everyone. What's important about what our movement, is putting forward, though, is not just pieces of legislation. And I think this is the thing I want to communicate today. It is actually about a totally different approach. An approach where we say government can actually work for the people. We can put our thumb on the scale, and we can tip that scale to the benefit of poor people and working people across this country. We can say that poverty in America is not a personal failure. It is a bad policy choice, and we can fix it by putting our thumb on that scale. So we have the answers, and I'm proud to be the leader with my sister Barbara Lee and the Poor People's Campaign of the Third Reconstruction Resolution, which really puts all of this together, right? This is the resolution for the vision for how to end poverty in this country, to address the interlocking injustices of systemic racism, of economic injustice, of poverty, ecological devastation and the denial of health care, of militarism and the distorted moral narrative of religious nationalism. Our movement, we have the answers. We have fought for them. We've achieved more in the last few years in making the case for our theory of change than we have in decades. And it's because you refuse to give up. You put aside perfection and you fought for real progress. Not incremental change, but real progress. You came together and you said, let's build the largest, most powerful coalition that focuses on organizing inside and outside, and let's get this done. But we're not done. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get out in a couple of years. Donald Trump's Project 2025 is a takeover that threatens democracy, our freedom, and our economy. It's not just an idea. People, it's 1,000 pages of a manifesto that is so extreme that Trump himself is now trying to say that it's not his. And to that, I say bullshit, and excuse my French. Let me just give you a few highlights. He wants to get rid of all our civil servants and replace them with loyalists so he can do whatever the MAGA extremist Supreme Court just ruled that he can do, illegal or not. And they don't just want to get rid of abortion, by the way. They want to get rid of IVF and contraception. They want to criminalize your personal health choices in every single state, and the MAGA Supreme Court will back them up. They want to abolish the Department of Education. They want to eliminate birthright citizenship. They want to build military detention camps to imprison asylum seekers and systematically remove all LGBTQIA+ protections. There are hundreds of pages that tell us what he will do. And he's repeating these words on the campaign trail with hardly anyone actually challenging him or focusing on what he's saying. And let's not forget what he wants to do to our economy. As Attorney General James proved in a court of law, Donald Trump is a billionaire who will lie, cheat, and steal to enrich himself at the expense of others. And that robber baron philosophy is just magnified if he gets into power. Everyone remembers the disaster of Trump's presidency. The United States lost 2.7 million jobs. Wealth inequality increased at historic rates. His disastrous tax scam, like the Bush tax cuts for the rich, were a trickle-down failure. And thanks to Donald Trump, the rich got richer while the middle class, the poor, and the working people were left behind. So if he gets back in office, it's going to be worse than before. It's going to be worse than before. 16 Nobel economists released a report saying that Trump's economic proposals for a second term would lead to, quote, an inflation bomb. The rich would land a windfall, while poor people will see their costs skyrocketing as their wages stay stagnant. And the economic pain is going to fall largely, you know, on poor people, on working people, on black and brown and indigenous people. So it's simple. We got to win. We got to win. We cannot let Donald Trump get back into the White House. We cannot surrender our democracy to a dictator who has been charged with 91 felony counts and for sexually assaulting women. We cannot. So that brings me to our movement, to our fight. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is going to be a hell of a fight. There's a lot of chaos right now. And our work is to stay focused, to rebuild the fragile coalition that we built, that gave us the trifecta, that implemented a big part of our progressive agenda. And to do that, we need to campaign not only as an opposition party to Trump, we definitely need to do that, but we also need to campaign as a proposition party for the people that tells people what winning would look like for them. How will their lives change when they wake up in the morning because of what we do? And that's what the Progressive Caucus has put out, our proposition agenda for 2025. First, we need to focus not just on changing the rules by electing more progressives, but also, not just by changing the rulers by electing more progressives, but also by changing the rules, okay? We need to focus on structural reforms. Get rid of the Jim Crow legacy filibuster that is stopping progress from moving forward. Protect our democracy by getting money out of politics and expanding voting rights with the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Let's get DC statehood. Let's pass humane immigration reform so that immigrants stop being used as political tools to divide us and cause xenophobia and racism. Let's codify abortion rights. I say this as one of the 1 in 4 women across this country who has had an abortion and had to be public about it. No one should control our bodies. No one except us. Let's reform the Supreme Court so that it is held accountable for the disgusting corruption. Let's put term limits on these MAGA extremist Supreme Court members. Let's expand the court so it matches the growth in our population. Let's finish the work that we started in the House when we passed Build Back Better with universal child care, where no family pays more than 7% of their income for their child care. Let's invest billions into housing because the rent is too damn high and no one can afford to buy a house. Let's tax our billionaires and our corporations to pay their fair share. Let's expand Social Security and Medicare, drop the Medicare eligibility age, add in dental and vision and hearing so that we can get on our way to Medicare for all. Let's raise the minimum wage to a livable wage. We're way past 15, y'all. Let's pass the PRO Act and other major reforms to bargaining. I'm losing my voice, as you can tell. Like implementing sectoral bargaining to give strength and power to workers across employers. Now, to do this, we're going to have to, as I said, rebuild that fragile coalition of 2020. And to do that, we're going to have to keep pushing for a ceasefire in the Middle East. What the Netanyahu government is doing in killing tens of thousands of Palestinians and destroying Gaza, what they are doing in refusing to even endorse a two-state solution or releasing the hostages, that has led so many of our Muslim, our Palestinian, yes, our Jewish young people, labor, black and brown folks to lose faith in us. And we need to bring them back. I was one of the earliest members of Congress to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire and to demand that we apply our own domestic laws and stop sending offensive military assistance to Israel. I am not letting up that fight because we must achieve peace. Now, this work of rebuilding our coalition means digging deep to organize. We need rural voters, we need independent voters. Thank you so much for all of you who are doing that work. But the biggest base of swing voters is not those folks. It is actually our people. The swing voter who won't vote for Donald Trump, but doesn't believe that we're speaking to them. The voter who swings to the sideline instead of using the power of their vote to put a mark on the ballot. These people that are out there, they will listen to us if we reach out to them, and you are the bridge. You are the bridge. That is the work that we need to do. And before I ask you if you're ready to do it, I want to end with this. Many years ago, I'm a big fan of Brittany Howard and the Alabama Shakes, and I was listening to an interview with Brittany, and she started talking about eruptions and how hard it is when things erupt. And I started thinking about that and really imagining that whole vision of eruptions and feeling it deeply in my soul around me, just with everything that was happening in the world. And I realized that it is incredibly hard, but it is also very clarifying to watch eruptions happen and to see what gets revealed. Because when something erupts, it opens up. It opens up the ground around. And it shows you what was hidden before, which maybe you couldn't see before. It brings out into the open those things that we couldn't or didn't want to see. And it's painful. It's not an easy process, it's painful. But it allows us to see more clearly everything that is there, and that, as an organizer, allows us to strategize and to organize. Our eruptions around us are clear. We all see them. You see them right in your communities. And you're organizers. You're people who know that organizing teaches us that strength comes in those deep times of crisis, that our beauty comes in recognizing the anger, the pain, the hurt, and in turning those things into power, just as so many people before us have done. Not to walk away from something, but actually to walk towards something. Not to hate, but to love. Not to fall into despair, but to lift us up into possibility. So that is the work ahead of us. And I want to ask you if you are ready to win. Are you ready to organize? Are you ready to put love and generosity over scarcity and fear? If you're ready, we're going to end with a chant. I'm sure you know it. Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop. Don't stop. Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop. Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop. Thank you, everybody. Happy Netroots.